guys don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know what I do.
Randy, thank you for sharing, because what I didn't think about was the impact of my reaction.
How do you know when something that happens to you is racist and when it's not?
That story perfectly illustrates my skepticism when I hear white people say things like I've watched Roots or I'm woke or whatever.
I started thinking about, were there times in my life when what I did was performative and I could have done more and I could have been more, and there was. I started thinking about kind of the reaction to what I had said about my kids and I watching Roots, and kind of the rolling of the eyes and saying it was performative. And I really started getting upset. I'm thinking, you guys don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know what I do. You don't know things I have sacrificed in different ways. You just don't know. And to have a reaction over one thing. And the other piece is, if you had told me that you sat down with your kids and watched Shoah, which is about the Holocaust, I would have been thrilled. I would have said, wow, that's great. They're learning something. So I sort of like felt good. And then I started agitating. And I would like to talk more about it, and I understand that, everything we're talking about is in good faith. And I understand that we are trying to understand each other. I mean, the fact that I'm sitting here on a beautiful Sunday in front of the camera, in front of Zoom, kind of says I want to be here, or part of me wants to be here. So I want to learn more, but I also want to be able to be honest and say what kind of really came up for me afterwards.
So that came up, and that sounds like defensiveness, which is totally fair, right? Because you felt an accusation, and then the thought is, well, you don't know me, and how could you say that? And or roll your eyes, and that reaction. Why would you have that reaction and then all the things that to be true? And so now what I ask, the next step is, now do the double click and ask, well, why did they have that reaction? Mm-hmm. And not from a place of, for lack of a better word, it's just how our ego operates. I'm not saying you're egotistical or anything like that. We all have an ego, and the ego is there to protect us. Mm-hmm. And so when we react to somebody else's reaction, it's the ego that comes up front to protect us. That's a natural human thing, right? But now that you've talked with your ego, and you've determined that there was nothing wrong with what I did, which is facts. There was nothing wrong with you watching Roots with your kids, you sharing that you watched Roots there's nothing wrong with that. And my reaction, or Andre's reaction to that, does not have any value on the right or wrong of what and who you are.
Your intention behind the action.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And you're right to say we don't know the intention behind the action. So all of that is correct. So we take all of that is correct. Now, all feelings aside, why did Andre and Felicia react that way? What is happening for them when they hear this information that would make them react that way? And that's where we can start having a real conversation and get to the root of understanding. When you can take a step back and say, their reaction isn't directly about me. Their reaction is about all of the experiences and perspectives that they have collectively gained over the 45 years of their lives being Black people in this country. And so why? And how can I better understand that? And if we all as human beings can get past the ego and trying to be correct about something or right about something, then we can start really having a richer, more fulfilling human dialogue. Because you're right, there's nothing wrong, but there's also nothing wrong with Andre's and our reaction, because that reaction truly had nothing to do necessarily with you, but the ego, our humanness, we always tend to take things because it was a direct reaction to something we said as if it was directly because of us. And that's not necessarily the case many times.
So I kind of did what you all did.
What do you mean?
Well, I had a reaction based on my experience and my ego. And that's basically what you said you did. So we're all like reacting.
Because we're humans.
We're all being human.
Yeah.
We're spirit. How does Unity Church? Because this, whatever, when Felicia was talking, this is straight Unity Church, which I attend. Not today, but I do. But we're all spiritual beings having a human experience, right? And I, as a person, struggle to balance that. I'm also a person who wears I'm a Pisces, emotions on his sleeve. So I don't know. You're a Pisces too, Randy? Awesome. So I don't know how to not react to something. So if you said, Andre, like for example, when I learned that lottery was $1.55 billion, I'm like, damn, I hope somebody hit. Like, I was like, and I need my ticket. I don't know how not to react. So I think, but I completely align with Felicia that that's where we can have a healthy dialogue, is that curiosity. And this is the place where Todd and I are trying to cultivate a safe space for that curiosity. So you can ask the direct question, you know what, Andre, why did you roll your eyes when I said I think roots?
Right. Well, okay, so I'm curious, and I don't want you to think I didn't, well, doesn't matter what you think. I did learn something, because that I didn't think I did anything wrong. But aside from that, I started thinking about, were there times in my life when what I did was performative and I could have done more and I could have been more. And there was, and one particular situation came up, and something I feel very badly about. I don't know if you want me to tell you or not.
It's totally up to you. You don't have to tell us.
Well, no, I'll tell you, this was very interesting. Years ago, I was the social action chairperson for our synagogue's social action committee. And our rabbi's claim to fame, I mean, you can see pictures of him, was that he marched with Martin Luther King. And that's all he ever talked about, is he marched with Martin Luther King. And it really got tiring after a while, because, I mean, okay. So we decided, I, as part of the social action committee, let's hook up with the Black church in Patterson, which is kind of a poor area. We were in a middle to upper middle class area. Let's hook up with them and have conversations. And everybody thought that was a great idea. The rabbi thought it was a great idea. We met about 3 or 4 times with this group, and all the rabbi did was talk about, I marched with Martin Luther King. I marched with Martin Luther King. And after a while, I think they were rolling their eyes.
I was about to say, can I roll my eyes?
Yes.
I'm big on eye roll.
Yes, roll your eyes, because we were all rolling our eyes. And the pastor from the church said, hey guys, could you put your money where your mouth is? Could you work with us to help us to, bring money into our church? And at the time, I don't know what was going on, and the rabbi kind of, oh no, and I didn't push it. And my biggest regret in my life is not pushing it as the social action chair saying, look, let's do fundraising with you or something. We really could have gone to their church. We could have gone to services. I mean, it could have been so much of a better experience, but I sort of allowed it to just stay with
That story perfectly illustrates my skepticism when I hear white people say things like I've watched Roots or I'm woke or whatever. And it's because exactly what the minister said, put your money where your mouth is. You know, we all know the saying, talk is cheap and BS makes the grass grow. So in order to, you know, bridge that gap, you have to start putting, the rubber at some point has to meet the road. Other than that, it's just performative talk.
Yeah. And I don't want to be defensive, but I have put the rubber with the road since then, in different ways. Yeah. But it really stuck with me. And to me, that was what was really performative. I mean, and when I think about the rabbi, I've sort of, and he's may he rest in peace, he's dead. But you know, we should have done more. And it was wrong. And his talking about marching with Martin Luther King was a bunch of fluff. So
was this in the 80s?
What?
Was this in the 80s?
He marched with Martin Luther King.
No. Not the marching with, because clearly he's talking about it in the past tense. So when this situation with the church in Patterson,
I think it was in the 80s. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was around there.
And we want to give context to the time, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of fear during that time. The 80s was a rough time economically, and then you had
Reagan's decade. Oh my God.
Economics. So there was a lot going on that I hope you give yourself context to in how you're feeling.
That's a good point, because I think part of it at the time is we're having a hard time fundraising for our own synagogue, and then here they're saying, you know, can you help us? But I still feel badly about it. It feels very performative, and especially because of the rabbis talking about Martin Luther King all the time. You know, it was just sort of, okay.
If I could just, you know, a reflection on my end, just hearing it, and Randy, this is no reflection on how you've lived your life, because I really don't know. You know, none of us know. You know, we know bits and pieces. We, you know, just as we know bits and pieces of everyone here. You know, my initial reflection, first of all, first things first, thank you for sharing. You know, thank you for sharing something you wish you could have done more. I think we all have ways in which that is the case. When he marched, maybe that was a big thing. You know, and his intention and his motivation and whatever involved that march was important. I remember Andre saying something in the last conversation that some of the feeling is, I think the phrase you use, Andre, is like not to rest on your laurels, essentially. Like, don't let one action define how you are as with regard to race. And I feel like, Randy, the reaction you had to your rabbi was kind of the same reaction Andre's response to you, Randy. Now, that doesn't reflect that you are like the rabbi, because again, we don't know your story, but I'm just saying, with what they know at the time in that first conversation, I think they're responding to you in a similar way you're responding to the rabbi.
And I want to expound on that point, because I want to point out what's going on here, what I believe spiritually, because in that response is a call to go deeper and to go higher. So Randy, do you remember when I kind of said, you know, watching Roots was a first level awareness, and now within your familial group, you've made your family or helped to facilitate the awareness of how Black people came to this country and a glimpse of the suffering their ancestors probably endured, right? And if you think of this as sort of like climbing a mountain of diversity, equity, and equality, we're now at base camp 1, but we have to keep going deeper. And so now, after you have the awareness, you have to do something with what you know. And so that's probably why you had the reaction to the rabbi. The minister was saying, put your money where your mouth is. And then my reactions to the whole Roots comment, right? Is that, okay, now that we have this, let's do, because there still are inequities. And I've been doing some reading during our hiatus on those equities and the specific dollar amount that is the wealth gap between Blacks and whites. If you're interested, it's $153 $1,000 on average, $153,000. Woo, we'll go into that another time. But what I want to say is that that's where I feel we are now, that maybe Black people are saying, okay, enough with the awareness seminars. Now let's go deeper.
So Andre and Felicia, and then Michelle, I'd like your kind of reaction as well. But just focusing on you two for a second, can you share a little bit where the eye rolls come from, what the experiences are that build to you feeling the way you do when you hear, let's say, something like, I watch Roots with my kids?
Felicia?
I think it just comes from a deep a deep place that goes back to childhood, that goes back to before I was born, when I was a egg in my grandmother's womb, because my grandmother made my mother and made the egg that I came from. It goes back to interactions I've had with friends that are white, with teachers, and it goes back to every instance where I've had somebody try to explain kind of the idea that they're not racist. And it just, it's almost it's a very surface reaction, to be honest. It now just comes regardless of the deeper thought process that I would have afterwards as I'm trying to work to evolve as a human being. And I think it also comes with just an understanding. Even though I roll my eyes, it's not even an eye roll at the person, because I think there's a deeper understanding that individual human is just that individual human having a human experience, and they can't understand all of the things that I've experienced. And so that reaction really comes from hearing those things over and over again, that I watched Roots, or I have a Black best friend, or I'm not white, I'm something that's is in my purview white adjacent and gets the privilege of whiteness. I'm not, you hear these things, and so after a while you're just kind of like, hear that thing is again, and it really is agnostic of the person. But I think, Randy, thank you for sharing, because what I didn't think about was the impact of my reaction on the other human. Because I was having my own human experience in that moment. And I think, as I am trying to call other human beings to do the double click, to actually think through how you feel, and to give empathy to yourself and to others, and give grace to yourself and to others. I give myself grace for my reactions. I'm going to have them. I'm okay with that. I'm going to react. I'm going to feel what I feel, because I understand where my feelings come from. But I also know that I'm going to take a step back away from the emotion and the feelings and try to think through how to give grace, and how to be more kind and more human in my responses and in my interactions with people. And so when I think about, where does that response come from? It is the initial human reaction to a lot of years of exposure to what is just racism itself. And it's so ingrained in so many ways that we don't even it's a lot to unravel and unwind. But at this point now, it's the same thing if my white female manager, and I've had many, you know, tells me certain things like, oh yeah, you know, like you can go far, but there's a lot you're gonna have to do. When I know she talked to my peer and she never said it, like when my peer was like, I want to get promoted, and like, yeah, I'm gonna help you. Right. So you just get used to the different treatment and you react as such, like, oh, and then
cynicism. It breeds
cynicism. It does. But we have to work to monitor that, because we can't, as a human being, that's a lot to carry, and we can't live our best life on this earth carrying it all the time.
I'm curious. Can I ask kind of a curiosity question?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when something that happens to you is racist and when it's not? In other words, I mean, and if you believe it's racist, how do you address it at the moment? I'm just really curious because, you know, I've experienced not the same thing, but some similar things because of my Jewishness. Mm-hmm. And it's been very direct, and, you know, I've had to think about how to respond. But I'm curious about how do you sort through? I'm also thinking, as I'm a retired psychotherapist, and I remember, I mean, I had clients that were people of color, and I remember one woman who was telling me something that happened, and I said, she hadn't even thought that it was racist, and I brought it up to her. I said, well, do you think maybe it was racist? And she thought about it. She goes, I don't know. So, I mean, how do you know? I mean, how do you know it's, you know, maybe there is something in your particular performance that might be something that she wants to work on with you, or that maybe it is racist and she hasn't said it to any of your white colleagues. So I'm just curious about that.
And this is always the dilemma, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's always a subtle thing. It's hard to pinpoint, because it's predicated on people's intentions, and you don't always know what another person's intention is. But what I go by to make determinations is, am I being treated differently, or does this person show up the same way all the time? And when you're in a team environment, you see how you see how people interact with you, and then you see how they interact with others, and your spirit senses the difference, and you know the difference. And not everybody operates in that way. So I don't go around thinking everybody's racist or everybody has racist intentions. And you got to understand, then there's a double click on it, where there are just ways, and everybody's guilty of this, even myself. There are things that we grow up with that we just kind of take, and we don't even ask why. We just, like, I remember until somebody tells you different or you learn. My grandma, she used to always say, like if somebody like cheated somebody out of something, she was like, oh, he got gypped. I had no idea that was a derogatory word. I had no idea where it came from. I grew up, and then it wasn't until I was in adulthood and I said that because that's what I had learned with no context, had no idea. And don't think my grandmother had any idea either. Mm-hmm. And this is an example that we walk around with these biases.
Thank you for watching this episode of Healing Race, and stay with us for a scene from our next video.
If you want to see more conversations like the one you just watched, please subscribe to our channel, share this video with friends and family, and like and comment on the video below.
If you'd like to be a guest on one of our episodes and have an open, real conversation about race, email us at guests@healingraceshow.com.
And if there are topics you think we should cover, we'd love to hear them. So please email your ideas to topics@healingraceshow.com.
As always, thanks for your support. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Now, here's a scene from our next Healing Race.
I literally have had a coworker. I was excited about something. Well, it was my manager. I was excited about something, and I went to his desk and I said his name, and I was excited because we had won something, and he literally turned around in fear, like he was about to hit me.
Welcome to being Black.
And it's just like,
Welcome to the race.
I'm not a fighter. I'm litigious. So like, I'm not gonna fight you at all. I have no upper body strength.
You haul their asses in the court.
Yeah,
I believe in that. I believe in a good lawsuit.
My face is too pretty to fight. Like, I'm not doing it. And so I just went to my desk and cried.
To watch the rest of that episode, go ahead and click the video below me.
To see a different compelling Healing Race episode, you can click the video below me. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.